Dude, did you just make a cross?
If that makes any difference.
Pardon?
I'm watching it on YouTube right now.
That's crazy.
That's an onk.
I noticed that.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Not help with any technical issues at all.
So do you change the gas itself to get the different colors, or is it the glass that changes the colors, or how do you make that happen?
Oh, this is something that I think ties right back to Electric Universe, something that they talk about that no one knows about, which is the dark mode, glow mode, and arc mode plasma regimes. You guys heard about this yet?
Really?
Yes, we have.
Well, has Krista heard about it? That's the most important thing.
No.
New people.
Have new people heard about it? But yes, I do know exactly what you're talking about. Basically, the way that if you increase the voltage and amperage over through a plasma, it completely changes the characteristics of that plasma, and it's not linear. In fact, it's laughably non-linear.
Yes. So this is why it's fun making power supplies, because it's easy to drive glow mode stuff because it's constant load.
Right.
And right when you get into the glow mode arc mode boundary, it starts doing cool stuff, but it's all that cool stuff it's doing is loading back into the transformer.
Welcome to the July 14th edition of The Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we have Sean, Robert, Jim, Derek, Krista, Chris, Buddy, and Rick, with our special guest Chris Burak from Barracuda Glass. He gets to show us his amazing work with electricity and glass during our first live broadcast, and we end up having a debate regarding the Mercury-filled Dendera Lights from ancient Egypt with William Sosa himself. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.
So it's an active, crazy active load, I guess, and it's not, I don't know how to describe, my electrical terms aren't very good, but a crazy reactive inductive load versus like a driving an element, a resistive load.
Well,
but so look at like a neon sign. A neon sign is neon in the glow mode.
Correct.
So,
or a fluorescent tube.
You can actually get like a neon sign to conduct electricity without actually lighting up too, which is, I think, not, I don't know if they know that in science, but that's part of the dark mode, glow mode, arc mode, which I find kind of strange. Like I can get...
Isn't that kind of like taking a fluorescent tube under a high tension wire and watching it light up in your hand?
Yeah, and that's, you're going to get glow mode conduction. So a vacuum tube's a good example of dark mode. So like a vacuum tube conducts electricity from the cathode to the plate inside, and you can't see that electricity conducting. There's no light being produced, but there's current flowing.
Right.
So like
a very low current in order.
Don't even pretend.
It ramps up to glow, right?
See. Just in case you want to know what a tube is, for those of you at home, it's basically a BJT, which is a bijunction transistor, but it's a analog version of one. If you notice that effect that when you touch the side of the glass and how it allows the current to flow through the glass better, well, that principle is what you would basically do in a physical form to allow you to use a very small amount of current to control a large amount of current. And that's the principle behind a BJT or any of these. It's basically one of the basics that allow you to make more complex chips, basically. So they're really awesome, is what I'm saying.
We're going an analogy to a vacuum tube here, yeah?
Well, that's what they are, basically. You use a small amount of current, you basically touch the side of it, and you can get a current going through it, where you normally would not be able to if you didn't do it. And this is the principle of the vacuum tube that allowed them to use that. But of course, that's just one bit, if you know what I mean, like in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, you're kind of analogizing it to just like a switch. I thought that a BJT was more of a current controlled switch versus a vacuum tube was more like a MOSFET, where it was more of a voltage activated switch. But it all depends on
actually, to be perfectly frank, the fact that we were having this conversation tells you that we know generally what they are. They're basically use a small amount of something to control a much larger amount of something, and this allows you to have gradual control. And of course, that analog control allows you to have that wonderful, rich sound. Until the Neve console came out, nothing could beat a tube. So, Sound City. Great documentary.
Yeah, I'm totally fascinated by tubes for a couple of reasons. One, I want to make them someday. It's complicated, but I think I can do it. And two, you can see what's going on in there. So I make these Tesla coils, and you make them with the solid state stuff, and it just blows up and smoke comes out. And then you call somebody or get the meter out and have a little cry for a bit. But with the tubes, you can see, like, if it'll arc over and you'll see a flash, or you'll see it, instead of just going up in smoke, you'll see the plate glowing red. So I like it. It gives you a visual kind of feedback as to what's going on, versus with all the solid state stuff. I feel like I need some kind of electrical engineering degree and more scopes and probes and math. And
I remember actually what you just described. There's a scene in Sound City where it's a documentary. Basically, Sound City was closing down, and David Grohl bought the Neve console that was there that recorded like Fleetwood Mac, and like tons of other artists were recorded there. And it's a perfect console. It cost about $74,000 at the time, which is approximately equivalent to like $1.5 million now. And this, so he bought that console, and he got to talk to Neve, the guy who designed it. And he said, he was talking about, it's just a basic microphone amplifier circuit, but the way that it is set up, it gives you an incredibly sweet sound. And this is the way that he described it. And this is the Neve himself, of course. And he starts going into more technical details. And just like you, David Grohl sits back and goes, you can see the little caption in the corner. It goes, does this guy know that I'm a high school dropout? Because I don't have a clue what he's saying now. But I can appreciate the truth that is the analog of the tube, if you can make it that way. But I was just wondering about the gases themselves. That was my big thing, because I've noticed the different properties of different gases, the way that they flow inwards and outwards and go to the sides and so forth. It's wow.
Yes, easily distracted by squirrels.
Look at that.
So
hey, Chris.
Yeah, there's global dark mode. So like we were starting, you're looking at that onc on the screen there, which is just xenon.
Right.
But it has the diffuse green feathers that are just the glowing. And then inside the body where the glass constricts, it's got that white arc. So that's like a good example of how to get an arc mode and a glow mode effect from the same gas. And then it's just really pressure dependent. So the lower the pressure you put in there of gas, the more everything wants to just glow. And then the more pressure you put in, the more it wants to do crazy. You get like glow mode filaments. And then all of a sudden they'll just go to that hard arc, and then it just pulls 3 times as much current and does crazy stuff. So it's just a matter of mixing the gases to get it to the right resistance. So like I can fill lamps and they'll pull more power than the driver will supply. And you just kind of got to find that sweet zone where it does something cool, but it doesn't pull 50 watts or 100 watts too much from the driver. Does that kind of answer your question?
Well,
and then we'll use argon, neon, krypton, and xenon gas. And then you just make the vessel. That's a complicated part in itself, but
I could appreciate just looking at it how much effort goes into it. So, but when I was the reason I brought it up is because you watched our video that we had a little while ago with William Sosa, and he used gaseous mercury, and the way that it responded in reverse, basically instead of touching it and it goes to your fingers, it went away from you, and therefore you could sort of control it inside just by using pieces of metal inside the glass. I thought that it might be. I mean, immediately when I thought of your work, I pictured you going, "Oh, with that technique, I could make like something that looks like two different words and make it spell something different depending on what voltage I turn the gas up." You know, if you were, like in the spray paint the side of a train type graffiti way, I guess, if you get my meaning.
Well, me and Bill kind of have a difference of opinion on how that phenomenon works. He's saying that different gases, or in the case that he's using mercury, he's saying that it will always repel. And certain gases will repel and certain gases will attract, which isn't a quality of the gas so much as a quality of the current density and the magnetic versus the dielectric energy. So I'm like, how do I, like if you take neon at a really low pressure and you run a really low current into it, you can get it to repel from your hand because your hand acts more as a magnetic field when the current's low. And then if you get enough current to go through the plasma, all of a sudden it'll just switch and it'll start attracting to your hand because...
because you stepped it up.
Science master, I don't know the exact definitions for it, but the way I look at it is the dielectric potential, like it wants to seek ground more than it wants to be its own contained system. So to me, it's like this magnetic versus dielectric... how do you say it? Like there's this symbiosis between the two that always exists, and it can just go total left wing or total right wing. Does that kind of make sense?
No, it does.
So it's not so much the gas, but it's how much current you're putting through it and what the characteristics of the system are. So like I can get, if you put the right amount of neon or the right amount of any gas and you have a low enough current, I can get it so that you can push it away with your hand. And then you just turn the power up and all of a sudden it just attracts to your hand, just like most Tesla balls.
Okay, so basically you've pushed it beyond the, let's just say the Earth's electrical pressure or the outside electrical pressure or the ambient electrical pressure to the point where now it doesn't care. You're trying to contain it. It still wants to get to ground. Too bad for you.
Maybe. My theory is that it's seeing as I'm powering it with AC. It can take like a loop from the anode I'm using or wherever the electrode or power source that it's coupled to from the transformer, and it can either go out through the lamp and then back to there and cause so in that low current density mode, it's kind of self-confined and it doesn't care about coupling to the air as much. I don't know. It's all really confusing. And this is all kind of theory. And I'm trying to explain stuff that I see in lamps. And then I look at science and they're like, oh, it's ionizing. And they have all these. And I'm like, that doesn't really help. But I see it kind of as being a contained magnetic system versus just reaches this point and then it just wants to couple outside that system because it's needs more, I don't know, something.
Well, this is actually very interesting. William Armand Sosa responds to you immediately. I'm reading him on on this. Actually, he's watching this video, and so hi, Will.
That's so cool. Hi, Will.
This is crazy because I didn't expect this. Anyway, he said electrostatic confinement, and then he said cations and anions. I will have to. I don't usually use those terms, so that's pretty cool.
Hey, tell Will to call in. Have join the show.
Well, as long as he's on Skype, you can just add him to the call anytime you want. So if he does pop in. But anyway, it doesn't make any difference. That's not the whole point. I don't want to see an argument here. It's just nice to see you, Will. And so the electrostatic confinement, I can understand that he was, because if I'm not mistaken, and William will certainly correct me if I'm wrong, it was the metal around the base when it was coming out of the anode or cathode that helped confine this at the beginning. Which I can understand because it's right up against the it's basically where it's coming out. It's turning it more into a beam.
Wouldn't that have been like the copper ring that looked like a flower head at the base of the tube?
Well, that's the whole Lotus thing. Yeah. Anyway, that doesn't matter though. Still, I'm trying to interpret it for. So anyway, go on, Chris.
I see the analogy that he's using there is if you took a garden hose and you kind of put you took a cone and you cut the very tip of the cone off and you put that around the garden hose so that it sprayed, 80% of the water out at 90 degrees in a plane to you, and then the little beam in the middle kept going straight.
Right.
I think he's coupling a lot of that energy that he's putting into that tube directly into the ground right where it's coming in, and then he's just having a little loop come through the middle. Which is why it's going to be on the lower magnetic side, and it kind of explains to me why it's doing the repulsive.
No. You make a very interesting point, and only because when I think about it, if it was grounding out at that particular point, you're going to have, of course, not completely. I understand. There's an inductive coupling, a ring current, basically.
Capacitive coupling. So if you take a
lamp
with electrode, and then you put a piece of metal around the outside, it's going to capacitively couple, but it'll only couple so much. Like if you use a really small capacitor, it's not going to couple 100% of the energy. It's going to couple proportionately to your capacitor.
Well, the capacitance is basically area, and it's the over distance. And of course, there's a constant thrown in there somewhere.
It's like when I make Tesla coils at a scope, and I don't know if it's safe or not. So I just put the probe close to the wire that I want to see what's on it, and it'll show up on my scope. So if you get that wire real close, you put a lot of wire real close, it'll take a lot of energy from there. If you pull it away, it'll reduce it. So it's kind of like a choke, kind of like a current choke in the sense that I kind of understand it. That makes sense.
Well, this is the basic principle that we've always used tubes for. In computers and so forth, that general principle, the ability to mechanically control the electrical flow.
Yeah, totally. So kind of
eventually electrically.
The stem of that lotus flower is kind of like a switch. Like if you change the capacitance from that point to ground, you'll change what's conducting inside the tube or the lamp versus what's conducting straight through that path to ground.
But I got to tell you, if I walked into that church and I saw these bunny rabbit ears, just like I saw his plasma snake in the Mercury, I'd worship it like a god. This is one of the things that I think even remotely, if the ancient Egyptian could pull something like this off, you'd be like, dudes, they're for realsies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, watching you guys' episode there on that Dendera Light, and I was hoping that somebody would bring up the sprinkler pump.
Sprinkler pump?
Yeah, there's a pump that just uses glass tubing and mercury.
Okay.
And all you do is drop mercury. You hook up, maybe you can find it on the internet there and show people a diagram. It's pretty simple, but you just basically hook up a tubulation to the vessel that you're trying to pump, and then you just keep dropping mercury down the tubulation, and it kind of traps an air bubble and pulls it down. And it's not efficient. It's not like a modern pump, but like if you just let that run indefinitely, eventually that vessel will just light, and it'll have trace mercury in it. So I'm like, I thought that was a huge.
What do we look up? What do we look up to find that?
I think it's called a Sprengler pump. Sometimes I look at words and then say them differently than they actually are in my head, though. So it might be a something pump. Here, let me go on Google. I'll see if I can find it quick. It's just like a gravity feed Mercury pump.
All right, I'm wasting a lot of the screen time looking for William. William has Skype up, buddy. If you know William, go ahead and he says I have Skype up. Go ahead and call me. So give him a call. Unfortunately, if I do it, as you can see on the screen, it's just people. I'm occupying screen time.
Sprengel, Sprengel. I just went to Wikipedia and put Sprengel pump, and it gives you a real quick. Here, maybe I can just do this. Does that work?
Yeah, we can see it.
You can see that. So yeah, if there's your lamp, and then you just put mercury in this chamber,
you can blow
and
that up there, Robert.
Just pumps all the air out of here and slowly pumps it out. And then you just seal this off, and there you got a trapped low pressure mercury vessel. And that's totally achievable. I love the fucking beep that, the Dendera scene, the whole Temple of Hathor and the Egyptian light. I'm like, I think this is totally feasible.
Well, and well, the thing is, and this is what I said to William, and thank you, buddy, for going in and trying to find him for us. He might have to actually relate to you through the YouTube channel or the Twitch channel, but either way, I noticed that it felt like this was this is at the time apparently where they were like selling spells, the same situation that you get when when the church was selling indulgences, that type of mentality, and it's the end of something. But it seemed that further back they were still able to hold on to this knowledge, which, to be perfectly frank, did not require any math to use. You just basically had to know how to control certain things, even if you didn't understand the actual mathematical principles. But in a way, the people who built, say, a pyramid or the pyramid clearly knew math. Come on. So anyway, to continue.
I think maybe math was just different. Like I love
whatever kind of math it was clearly different. But yeah.
But I'm like, I like the expanding Earth theory. I always wondered how dinosaurs survived. Like a giraffe. You ever seen an autopsy of a giraffe? How does a Brachiosaurus walk around on land? That doesn't make any sense. And then I was like, maybe if the Earth was smaller and gravity was less, that explains everything. So I'm like, who knows? Maybe the pyramids are from some pre-cataclysmic cycle, and just math was different. Maybe rocks didn't weigh as much when they built those things.
Well, now you're hitting right beside my heart right there. That's a beautiful one.
Maybe they had those ice cream cones you smacked together, and it resonated the rocks and exploded.
My wonderful interpretation is a very simple one. Basically, if heat and the amount of heat changes the property of a material, should not the charge or the amount of charge also change the properties of material? And we can't ever leave Earth or this general orbit of the sun to change our actual potential that much. And we don't go and look for that. But although there is some evidence, like when you drop batteries or or you suspend capacitors, sometimes there's a change in, a potential gravity, apparently. So anyway, so these things seem to be maybe there, but until we, can shoot someone to Pluto and then watch it all mess up. I wondered if half the time we screw up is because the properties of the material were not the same anymore. So when they went to land on Mars, it was like, yeah, but this structure only has 30% the rigidity it should have, and it's smack.
Ice harpoons. Why are the ice harpoons? Oh, rock. It's in a crack.
So William Sosa has joined. So
here he is.
Now we're gonna have to go. Does anyone have any boxing gloves? Anyway, no. So let's see how this goes. You mentioned something about cations and ions and the control of the actual throttle down by the lotus flower that we were obviously getting wrong. In your mind, this is the gist of what the thing that you were like. I must interject. So
yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm
And
not
welcome.
sure how good my voice is coming through.
Rich baritone, sort of like one of the
great.
doctors.
Okay. Well, as long as it's not breaking up.
No, it's great.
Hey, Chris.
Welcome back, Will.
Yeah.
Well-
Yeah. The only the
Welcome to the first
mistake
live stream.
Yeah. The thing I would say about the Dendera Light that I keep hearing kind of misrepresented even by Neil is the idea that the glass bulb itself has no electrodes in it at all. It's simply a glass bulb filled with mercury under low pressure. And the mercury, what I've come to learn from speaking with Chris, because Chris and I had some conversations through Facebook, the idea that there's glow mode, arc mode, dark mode. I hadn't given a lot of thought to any of that as it related to the Dendera Light. Since then, I've come to realize that the Dendera Light is in a glow mode and not in arc mode. And when you can get the mercury to get into glow mode, the mercury itself has a charge, an electrical charge, and I believe it's a negative charge. Right? It has more electrons than protons.
You're using alternating current.
Yeah, again,
It means the charge is changing back and forth.
No, that's not true of the gas itself. That may be true of the electricity going through it that actually, excites the mercury. But the mercury itself generates a charge of a negative charge, as opposed to neon, which creates a positive charge. And so that's why,
relative to what's on the other side of the glass, I'm guessing, like air.
Well, no, relative to a neutral atom. A neutral atom has the same protons and neutrons, so it's neutral. If you could add an electron, then you have a negative charge, and if you could take away an electron, you have a positive charge.
I think the part you're trying to get at is what's left after the electricity takes what it's after, or I think it's called electronegativity.
And
So if you take an atom and you strip off one electron, there's a bunch of stuff left, which is what forms.
Right, and that may be fine, but the actual. Okay, I'm sorry.
The non-glowing part of the plasma. So, like the plasma is, according to science anyway, the electrons that have been ripped off by the electricity and then fallen back on to the nucleus of the atoms.
That's not exactly true. It does just mean it just means ionized. Really.
Right. And mercury doesn't ionize by stripping away an electron. Mercury ionizes by adding an electron. It actually grabs an electron out of the current flow and gives itself a negative charge.
I see.
So it's not. It really doesn't care what it's being charged with. DC, one current, one way. As long as you get that mercury to actually glow, you have created a negatively charged plasma.
And we should be respectful, of course. Of course, mercury will have significant more weight to it as well. If it was creating sort of any inductive spin, its field should be stronger. But that's just a property of metal.
So the idea being is once that gas, that plasma has a charge, it will attract or repel, another charge. So if you have a Van de Graaff generator that creates a very strong negative charge, you'll repel that mercury plasma. And if you have a very strong positive charge, you will attract that plasma. And so that's why the Dendera Light forms the way it does, is because the glass of the tube is an envelope of negative charge. And so it's the negative charge of the plasma inside, the mercury plasma, repels the side of the glass in all directions, not just one direction, in every direction. So if it's heading towards one end, it bounces off that end. That's why you have the head at one end. You can kind of imagine it like a rock in a stream. If you were to put a rock in a stream, you'd see this spot where it's kind of eddy current. You see these eddy currents. That's what happens at the head of the snake. You're seeing the eddy currents of this flow of mercury through that glass, flow of charge through the glass. So it's go ahead.
And I apologize for just interrupting there, but I do notice that in nebulae, especially the bipolar ones, the ones that we can see that are hourglass shaped, you can see that similar I guess you could say double layer as the head of your snake. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that a few times. Like, I mean, not exactly, but that same sort of, this is definitely a contained body. This is a separate and distinct from this part of the hourglass, like the butterfly nebula, for example.
Exactly. And so what is causing that double layer? I believe it's electrostatics. It's one gas is repelling the other gas. Some people think it's electricity creating magnetic fields that are separating them, and that may be true. I don't know, but the electrostatics is very rarely brought into the equation at all.
I actually bear with you on that one. During my we were at Bath just recently, and I wanted to stress that this doesn't actually encounter like when stresses get too high, and then you get like vortexes like tornadoes and hurricanes and pillars of fire and whatever must have been going on way back when. One of the things that did occur was, I said, but I'm going to explain it in the terms of electrostatics, because we can all really kind of get our head around, just to prove to you that the Earth is a charged body, just straight up. And let me show you how. And you go through it sort of like on that level.
Hey, another thing that I noticed in the Dendera Lights that I don't think's ever been mentioned is, how they have the dual lamp configuration? There's either one,
right?
There's a set. They have both lamps. I think one of those snakes is male and one of those snakes is a female snake. You notice the heads are slightly different, and one's going one way and the other one's going the other way. Put a little bit of thought into that, but I think there's something there that no one's kind of looked into yet.
No, that is there is the if I'm not mistaken, and William had pointed out that it had something more to do with the hermetical versions of the sun and the moon, Mercury versus whatever the other gas was. I'm not even sure. I think it was hydrogen. I could be wrong.
It was called the day-night tube.
The day-night tube, right?
And so I assume that was the sun and the moon of alchemy, sulfur and mercury.
Right, okay.
Well, I still think that there could be actual lamps and that could have been depicting a real thing, but I'm more in the camp that was a recording of what they learned in the last era or epoch or dynasty, and it wasn't so much of a pamphlet or a sales brochure for the lamp itself, because I see it as an analogy to how the whole system works, as the lamp or the glass being the envelope that we're in, or the ionosphere.
Well, I can see that. And I've also heard,
But he's like, where do you power these lamps? Did the Egyptians have Tesla coils? And I like all Bill's theories, and I like the oscillator circuit that he's got there. I think that one's great. But I think that the power source for the lamps, as far as depicted, is the sun, because it's the temple of Hathor, which is the solar temple. So I think I still see it more of a cosmogony tale, or as an analogy or a textbook, than a pamphlet for an actual lamp or service. You know what I mean?
I'm not denying that. In fact, I think that the possibility clearly existed that this. I mean, compared to what they must have had, this is a pale imitation, in my opinion. I mean, I'm talking about the failure of the failure of the Silver Age as it begins to die down. The Golden Age itself, what that was, the skies were different. The world was different. Powering them. I mean, I'm not sure if they could make glass because that's an actual kind of neat trick to do. So I'm not sure about that. But still, playing with electricity that was just humming through the world. I mean, we know what just happened when a few big comets come near the planet. The whole Earth shakes, not because of the sonic boom when they explode, but in synchronicity of the flashes. Like the whole Earth is piezoelectrically shaking from that. So if that was a common condition, taking advantage of that as a power source would seem as simple as taking advantage of a falling water source to spin a wheel.
Yeah, I hear you. I still see it kind of as an analogy. I'm like, I think human beings and life forms are the plasma in that lamp, and they're depicting life. So it's not, I don't see it as like a lamp.
This is not about the lamp anyway. This is about your stuff. I mean, I'm glad that we got William on to at least challenge you back on, like, well, what does he mean exactly? Because I didn't know, and I was not doing him justice, and clearly I was misrepresenting him. So, and Lael is laughing at me already. So
I ain't trying to trouble.
No, that's cool. I think it's hilarious. But still, this is still, if I think that I would speak for everyone here that what you're doing and being able to get these different colors. Now, is this just, I mean, like you said, this is not just air. You're actually doing different things with different gases. Obviously, neon, xenon stuff, different colors, of course. But you use a Tesla coil. And now, you said AC, but do you mean AC with a huge DC offset? Or do you mean AC?
Yeah, so the system that drives it's basically just like a high frequency oscillator that drives the primary side of small transformer, and then the secondary side is one side's grounded to earth, and then the other side goes right into the lamp or into the whatever you're using as a coaster or a coupling capacitor. So as far as I understand it, it's just high voltage AC at 20 to 80 kilohertz. Most of the available drivers run, and the core, like some of them use a core, like a Tesla coil is an air core, which is far efficient, but great for isolating 100,000 volts. The smaller transformers that are available, like through Amazing One, use a ferrite core. Of
course.
And ones will only do 20 to 50,000 cycles a second.
Well, it's because of the hysteresis, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you can only push so much frequency through the cores.
There's a small delay in switching them back and forth, the polarity of all the magnetism. But the reason I bring this up is because one of the things that Tesla coils usually do is they're always pushing outwards, as opposed to being a full swing back and forth like a power transformer. They would offset themselves completely so that the lowest they go down to is 0, and then they come back up to full, and then they go back down to 0 again, as opposed to going positive, negative, if you get my meaning.
I hear you. You're talking about the resonant rise buildup into
basically,
the top
just
coil, yeah.
Pounding DC out is what they're doing in a sine wave, more or less.
I hear what you're saying, just as a higher offset, so it's not like positive, negative, 100,000 volts reference to ground, maybe reference to the top of the coil or something like that.
Actually, incidentally, your technique there that you had, or the thing that you had built there, William, is, if I'm not mistaken, that is exactly the same thing. It's on off, but it never hits 0. I mean, it goes to 0 alone. It never goes negative. So it's very similar to a Tesla coil, but just basically a magnet and I guess you use a tin can. which I thought that was pretty, and a nail. But still, I think that's, if testicles usually do that, if that's the case, then you're getting more DC than you know, is all I was trying to say.
I hear you. That could be. I'm totally not an electronics engineer, and my oscilloscope skills are far from up to par. But the one thing I'd rebuke to that is that you can't really couple DC into the lamp, even if it's present. So the glass is dielectric, and it's only going to allow AC to pass through it. So unless you're using electrodes, I don't think there's...
clearly, no, you're right. You're right. No. What I meant by DC is I just meant the offset. The offset is off to one side. Basically, if you imagine zero being the Earth, the transformers, most transformers power transformers in the world will go up and down, positive and negative. So when it says it's 110 volts or 120 volts, in actuality, it's going up 179 volts and down, or 169, I'm not sure, and then all the way back down to negative 169. And if you do the math, it basically works out to be 110 volts DC. Now, in your case, though, I was just thinking that it's basically going up to 300 and something, and then down to 0, and then up to 300 and something, and down to 0, as opposed to actually going into negatives, which is basically give Tesla coils that funky ability to really pound out the lightning. It wants to reach out, as opposed to going back and forth. Because if it was going back and forth, it would just hum. If you know what I mean. Like, transformers don't shoot electric shocks, bolts everywhere is what I meant. So I think that's what's going on there. So you're getting the AC, but it's always above 0.
Okay.
I know that sounds strange. Someone somewhere is probably going to go, I'm not saying it right, but but I am.
Yeah, know how to draw everything on a graph and reference everything to 0 is one of the complicated things. And that's, again, what brings me back to electric universes, because, like, where's your ground reference for the universe? We just apply everything to Earth potential.
What most people don't even know is that Berkeley currents will flow in the opposite direction. And we've noticed this even in the smaller things like water lines, when they're little tiny, like when you get a water bridge between two beakers, and if you actually have red in one and green in the other, when they are crossing between each other, you can see the red goes up the middle and the green goes along the outside.
I haven't seen that yet.
Well, and that's akin to a Berkeley current. So if you have because it's force free, it's trying its best not to mess with its own electromagnetism. So when you end up having this current flowing, parts of it are going in one direction, but there will be parts going in the other, not unlike a tornado. So what is going on here? What's with the are you blowing the glass here? Is this the technique that you're using, or?
I'm not sure where we're at. I've drifted onto the Dendera Light, and I was looking at floor plans of the Temple of Hathor. I keep looking at it and seeing all these Helmholtz cavities and trying to tie that into it somehow, but I haven't got there yet. Sorry, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a blow for a hookah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I blow glass. I do borosilicate. People don't know what borosilicate is. It's like labware. So, like, I work with the guy at the university and do technical stuff, mostly out of clear.
Oh, so stuff that can resist certain heats and temperatures so that he can use them for his experiments?
Yeah, so there's a huge range of glass available, anywhere from soda lime to like window glass to what people refer to as Pyrex, which is, people think Pyrex is a type of glass, but it's a brand. But that's borosilicate, which is what I use. Don't get that confused with the cookware, because it's not the same glass. It's tricky. But I use like a Cymax borosilicate, which is the same stuff that they'll make lab apparatus out of. So like flasks and jars and cylinders and stuff. So it's well suited to take the heat changes and the thermal shocks and all that stuff. And then it allows you to do way more intricate things than, say, most people think of glass blowing. They think of a hot shop where you have like there's a giant cauldron full of liquid glass, and you reach in there with a pool cue kind of thing, and you get some out, and then you stick it in a beer keg that's on fire. So that's more of the traditional glass blowing, and that's soft glass. So real hard to get the intricate shapes and the wall seals and that kind of stuff with that glass. And then I have, sorry, my phone's dying. I gotta plug it in here.
No problem.
So, okay. Yeah, and then I got a lathe here. Maybe I can. So there's, can you see that in my phone? There's my glass lathe.
Oh wow! So you actually you keep it spinning while it's semi-molten to keep it from drooping? Is that the technique, or? Yeah, exactly. Gravity's either your biggest friend or your worst enemy when you're blowing glass. You just got to get along with it real fast. So yeah, the lathe just spins everything, and then that allows me to hold, like some of the lamps I make start as 100 to 150 mil tubing, which comes as a 5-foot section, which weighs like a couple pounds. You can't physically do anything with that by hand. So you got to put it in the machine there. And then that, yeah, let's see if my phone. So there we go. I turn that on and turn that up. And then that lets that rotate and that rotate. And then it's got a wheel. Oh. Smash my burner. Bring stuff together and apart, and then use chucks. I don't know if I'm in the camera here. Oh, I'm seeing it.
And then that way I can hold, like this will hold a 250 millimeter piece of something, all the way down to smaller sizes.
So
that makes everything out of tubes, and then I got a, if you can see, there's my bench torch. So there's another torch on the bench so that you can hold stuff in front of it, and then you're not necessarily on axis. And then everything goes in this kiln right here, and that makes it anneals or tempers everything to make it all, how do I easily say it, just makes the glass all not stressed. Takes the temper out of it so that it doesn't smash into a million pieces when you touch it. It just is as strong as possible. And then I'll put something in there. And the tricky part is that all the lamps need to get connected to the pump here. So there's this, you can see there, there's a small tube that comes out of the pump, and the manifold that has to connect to the piece inside the kiln, which makes it kind of tricky because then you got sometimes these gigantic pieces and it's on this little tiny tubulation this big, and you got to maneuver that into the kiln and get it onto the pump.
Have you seen those videos where they're playing with plasma in space, or showing how to make the rings of Saturn or something like that? I saw, I'm not sure how long ago this was, but we were watching a Russian video on the International Space Station, and it was talking about plasma in, like, how things self-arrange.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was awesome.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because I imagine that someone like yourself would be like, you know, if only gravity wasn't a thing, what could I make?
I would love to see my lamps in space.
See? Because I know that if gravity was such a fickle mistress in my work, I would feel, what would it, to create without it, what could I do?
Please tell me what gravity is.
Do you, well, according to whom?
Right? No, it's a loaded question for sure.
You're in the wrong group for that one.
Well, no, you're actually probably in the right group, because at least you'll get more than one answer. See, I've learned a long time ago that when someone comes up and says, I have it all figured out. The only thing you be sure about is he's wrong. That's it. Like that's
right. Every assumption I've ever made pretty much was wrong.
Well, maybe not assumption, but I mean everything all figured out. You probably have part of it, and that part of it is probably making you think that you know everything. And that's great. Tell us the part that you think you know, because that's the part that's probably going to lead us somewhere and help the entire human race. You might as well move from that point forward.
That's why I find this debate with William so interesting, is because to me, like I sent a video to him there with a low pressure neon lamp.
Right.
That, like I was saying, if I could control the amount of current going into it, I can get that neon to either push away from your hand or come right towards your hand. I wonder if I can find that video.
However, that is a more neutral gas, though.
To me, I'm like, that's gravity. That's like I'm either attracting or repelling that.
But it's not gravity, though.
Depending
and
on
the
it's
electrical not gravity
thing of the system. It's an electrical interaction.
Well, okay, gravity may be an electrical interaction, but one of the issues that we have is, of course, the magic that gravity has, that you can put yourself, well, I mean, all hard drives are wrapped in metal, and the reason they're wrapped in metal is because they have a Faraday cage. You want the Faraday cage so that you don't erase what's inside on those wonderful platters that are storing all that data. But that is why gravity is different, because you can't shield it. And that itself is the distinctive thing. Going to a subatomic level, which is what Wall does, because it makes a very good premise that these dipoles are occurring on a subatomic level, but can't actually leave the inside of the atom, so they can't flow like when you rub your hair on a balloon. And then there's a little bit of charge transfer, and you can sort of stick it to a wall. But you can't do that with gravity, because all the charges are locked up inside of the molecular structure of the atom. They can't really get anywhere. That's his principle. I think that's a good idea, or at least way better than the bending of space and time. That's one. Or the other one that basically says, what's the other one that I really like that they try to do? Me and a few other people have had this debate, mental exercise. So I give Chris Burak a bucket with rope on it, and I go, Chris, spin this around in circles. Okay, and you're spinning this. I'm going to call that bucket the moon, and you're going to be the Earth. Okay, we're going to spin that, just spin it around. Now, are you actually wasting energy doing this? Well, yeah, holding that there it takes a bit of effort. Holding that spinning water as you're holding it there. So if that is the case, then why isn't that happening in any other system? I mean, if you work on an electronic system, you know that there's a principle called the max power theorem. Basically, the heat is not generated at the speakers. The sound is coming at the speakers, but you must, if you're generating 500 watts of sound, you must burn 500 watts of heat to make that sound. And that's why your amplifiers get hot.
They sure do.
And that is why that happens. But the speakers don't. So this is the whole thing that basically I come back to is, well, what's powering gravity? Where is this coming from? Why is it happening? And it's not satisfactorily explained, even philosophically, just from those basic questions. And I'm sorry for seizing that, but anyone listening should go, yeah, damn. Sorry.
Yeah, someone explained to me how those bosons do it.
Yeah, I don't know, the Higgs and then the I don't know. Apparently, I can do anything. I can claim anything if I have $17 billion and a great big circle.
Well, you can call it anything you want, just not the ether.
Well, we're going to get into that already. How can everything in electrical engineering be based on something, and then you guys go, yeah, but we don't really need that. What? Wait a minute. What? Like what? Like no. We measured that. Yeah. But we measured this, and we have mass, and Newton beats, I guess, Maxwell.
But also, what is mass?
Well, this is where we get right back to charge, and we're sitting here having a conversation and going, What I mean, we build with bricks now that are yay big, and then now we're going. Before we would build with bricks yay big, and then when it was the pyramids, we were building with about 2.5 to 3.5 tons. On the upside, 80 tons. But then you go back further and further, and you're at like 1,800, and suddenly 3,000 tons. And so the only thing that makes any sense is that it was fairly easy for them to do that. That's the only thing I could say. I mean, the situation on Earth must be such that it was not too hard to do that. And that alone is just blasphemy for people who go, no, we are the best that ever was. I mean, you know it's wrong. You know that they are wrong when this happens. When you go, well, you're the best people that ever were? Okay, build a pyramid. Just build the Great Pyramid Cheops right beside the second right one. Make it just as good as that one.
Well, they're the best at extrapolating indefinitely from a small.
I just mean they couldn't do it, clearly.
Assuming that everything's linear. But what's linear, really?
No, because they're writing out catastrophe. If you write out catastrophe, you miss everything. I mean, I don't mean to go all Velikovskian, but I mean, Jesus, listen to the man once in a while. I mean, he had something to say. Guess what happened? The skies were on fire. Shit rained down. Chicken Little was screaming, you know?
Yeah, I went back and reread the Bible after I read Velikovsky. Makes more sense. And the whole the Purple Dawn Ganymede hypothesis.
You want to blow your mind? Have you read the Apocrypha?
I don't think so.
Do you know what it is?
Ooh.
My mother has a copy of it, so I loved it. Basically, it's the one that it's not sort of like if you think of the Old Testament as Jewish and you think of the New Testament as Christian, the Apocrypha is like these few hundred years where angels were like really prevalent and walking around and doing shit. And that and that's when you get like the Semyaza hanging upside down by one leg, and that becomes, of course, a tarot card, you know, the hangman and all this other stuff, like where all that reaches into. And I trust me, I mean, it is beyond my strengths, bailiwick or whatever, but still, one cannot but think about that. I mean, when you're talking about stuff like that we just discussed. So.
It's reminding me of the Anunnaki.
Well, there you go. You see.
I want to know what's in the bag, man.
Well, did you not? Oh, well, guess what? You're going to be very happy. I learned what was in the bag. I was hanging out with Andy Hall, and we were going over Göbekli Tepe. And we were like, what's in the bag, dude? What's in the bag? And then, of course...
What's in the bag?
No. Don't worry. Brad Pitt was there, and Kevin Spacey did not look concerned at all. But clearly, I'm just telling you right now, Morgan Freeman was shitting himself because he knew it was going to happen. But the point is, the bag was...
You're selling those pine cones for gold, right?
Well, there's another thing that we could probably talk about. But these ideas of the arcs, which are like prominences, but they were on the Earth, were like the carps that were seen in China that were diving across the hemispheres. They were above the atmosphere. They were above the ionosphere, so they looked like there was stuff below them, like the sheet. And these loops there repeat in several cases. Now, I found that to be brilliant, and of course we understand that there has to be a circuit. I mean, there's something happening in the skies that will induce a secondary current, and then of course those currents will induce a secondary current, and yada 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 yada. And of course eventually we get those arches monument there, which this bugger there, Robert, is really awesome because he gets to live right beside that. I got to see one of them. He's probably seen 2,500 of them. And now he wanted to answer.
Add something?
Oh yeah, he had to go.
Sorry, Neil?
No, of course, I'm done. Please go ahead.
I just typed in loops or buckhorns not connected to the rear of the buck. Those ancient pictures of stags, square stags, sometimes with long legs, sometimes with short legs. These are all electrical discharges. That bag is an electrical discharge that was witnessed by everybody on the planet, up in the skies. Doubt. That's what I've been saying for months and months and months now since I figured it out.
So what you're telling me, Richard, and I don't mean to be insulting you, but I kind of am when I go. So basically what you're saying is you've discovered the electric universe. Congratulations.
No, I've discovered a small piece of the
I know.
universe. I figured it out in my own brain.
Well, I think that I have it figured out. Some guy goes, oh, have you read Duardo's work? Oh, have you read Bill Mullen's work? Oh, I'm like, okay, clearly I have a reading list that I have to catch up on.
Kind of like the day that I figured out that the Indian chiefs and the main important people in the tribe that wear that feathered headdress, that's a representation of Mars, Venus, and Saturn, the polar configuration when Mars was in full cometary display, looking like feathers wrapping around Saturn, and Mars sitting in front of Venus looking like a face.
Actually, I'll tell you something that always
when I found that
out,
it blew my mind. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I actually was like cool with that, but the part that always blew me away was that if you look at the headdresses of the Roman soldiers, and I mean some old thing you might have flipped through in grade 4 or whatever, and you go look at the Native American headdresses, they're identical. The mohawks versus the ones that are wide and going across the outside with all the feathers. And of course, it depends. The wide ones that go across the sides were the ones that were the leaders. They were the centurions versus the other men that were the ones with the mohawks. They were the ones with that kind of thing. I was like,
the leaders of the warriors, they had bull horns, and the shamans, they wore bull horns. Well, that's Saturn. The sun shining on Saturn, and we get the crescent and the star. They didn't represent the star; they just represented the bullhorn.
See, and every time you talk about that, I'm like, but I still believe in the Argo because now Jim's completely sold me. So now I'm like, when was that?
Well, why couldn't it have been both?
Well, that's what I mean. I clearly think that there has been multiple catastrophes, and to be perfectly frank, I'm just happy that the human species is here to have a debate about it because it looks like we're still living through it. We have proof of 5 of them in the Middle East. They've dug down and they've found 5 destructive events, and not only that, they've found multiple events everywhere around the world, and I think most of them equal up to 5. Well, now you've convinced me that I have to do some archaeology, but still, this is about Chris. So, what are you doing? What is this device that you're trying to build here? I'm picturing like some sort of organ made for aliens.
Oh, device? Oh, there's just a bunch of sconces on my wall.
Just a bunch of sconces on the wall. Do you know what happened when Daniel Jackson showed up on Stargate Atlantis and they just had to find 3 sconces? They found They found Janus's secret lab, and then that's when the evil Asgard showed up. I'm telling you, don't mess with this stuff.
I gotta watch all these shows.
Yeah, you probably do. I'm just a geek, but a nerd as well. I can't help it. It's just the way I am. But still, someone with a gift or a good question, please speak up to our friend here, and including William, if you have any feedback on what Chris's points have been, because I guarantee that your education level. I mean, since you're both experimentalists, this is where you can get to some really good conversation. I'm betting. So. I'm being quiet now, is what I'm saying. Someone else talk.
Somebody earlier in the chat said, "Do you have a charge plate?" This is way earlier in the comments. A charge plate that's causing the charge, if you will. I have to go back up and look. And you kind of explained it, but this is way earlier in the chat. I'm trying to go back up and get to it. Guy asked a really good question. I'm going back. It's almost at the beginning.
Look for Don.
Can you speak about
his
the
name was
details
Don.
of the? Here you go, Don. Don Crest. Can you speak about the details of the apparatus that creates the plasma glow? Does it sit on a charged plate? I mean, you were explaining it, and he may have caught it or came on a little later, but that was a good question from the listening audience or viewing audience, I would say. Explain the details of the apparatus that creates the plasma glow, and does it sit on a charge plate?
So as far as I can easily describe it, the transformer is basically a Tesla coil. So there's a vacuum tube Tesla coil I built, and then there's a little solid state Tesla coil. And then the drivers, there's another vacuum tube Tesla coil. And then this is what's available commercially now from that Amazing One place. And that's basically the same as this, only they shut it off so I don't arc to my phone. So there's just a little transformer in the back. And then it's kind of the same concept. That white thing that you see there is the secondary of the Tesla coil. So same as this part in here, the part that shoots the sparks. And it's just potted inside of I don't know, some epoxy or something. And then that can run either right into an electrode. So I have these neon electrodes, but for borosilicate glass, so I can couple right into the inside of the lamp, kind of like a neon sign using those. Or always need fuses. Or for the wireless lamps, what we're basically doing is taking this top load here, little toroid, and we're just basically extending it into one of these coasters. Just basically a piece of metal perf screen that I just put inside of epoxy or inside of a piece of wood that I make on my wood lathe there. And then that way, I don't know if you can see that, but that way you can't actually touch the electrode. So it'll shock you a little bit, but it won't really get you. And then you just put the lamp right on top of there. How's that? Did that answer any questions?
I think that was pretty straightforward. That is an awesome coaster. It looks like a Capri coaster, if I'm seeing it right.
That was amazing looking beetle.
Really nice too, man. Wow.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the images on there. Well, that's the problem with art, is you can keep doing it and putting more stuff, and then
I guess my question then would be is how's your electric bill? I'm just saying. I mean, is it efficient?
Here's my oxygen system. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 machines and another pump, and oh yeah, it's nasty. It's like $650 a month.
Woohoo! Wow, that's more than pumping the AC like for a month straight, not turning it off for any reason.
But that's not so much as a current draw for the lamps. My electric bills for producing oxygen. I used to buy oxygen in tanks, but like I spent $12,000 on oxygen for a couple of years, and then I was like, that's too much. So yeah, now I got that crazy setup that I can make it at home, but that draws a little bit of current. And then my kilns are pretty current intensive, but that's about it.
Did you say you're selling the coils yourself?
I'm not quite there yet.
Okay.
I'm making them myself and trying to get to the point where I can make something that I know is going to be safe and last 10 years and not cause any problems. But right now I'm trying to build more just to understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, I understand that.
You can try and learn how a Tesla coil works without building one, but I'm like, you won't help anybody build one that way.
Right. Because I heard you mention a company that you could get them from. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, if you go to there's a place called Amazing One, amazing1thenumeral.com. They sell all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, this is good stuff to see citizen scientists, if you will, just doing this and we're running into more people, like seems like daily, that are just in the lab, in their houses, just, you know, going in. You know, I'm amazed. I am. I really am.
Here, I'll take you for a tour downstairs where I keep all my transformers.
Oh, wow. And I guess I'm looking at someone to rebuild a Torella too. Who's going to be the next?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've always been into. I'm like, I think Birkeland's fascinating. So I don't know if you can see here, there's some extra lamps. There's some lamps I got left. There's my transformer collection.
Nice. Yeah, I'm always talking to people about the electric view and the interesting folks that we're meeting, and this is the first step, if you will, to prove how things work. Pretty much taking the bull by the horns and doing it. And you know, I appreciate guys like you that we run into that are just doing it. You know, just outright doing it. I mean, I'm at the level where I know I could take an old fuse if it blows, and I can put a piece of aluminum foil around it and just get a copper wire and pray that when I pop the fuse back into an amplifier, I won't blow it up and it'll last, you know, through the night. So that's about the extent of it with me. But you guys go in, you know. I mean, you guys are going in.
Yes. Send money for fuses.
Right. No, if you're DJing, because I DJ, if you're out, boom, a fuse blows. I mean, something's wrong with your equipment. But how do you get through the day? It was like, this is the 80s. Get a piece of aluminum foil. Get a piece of copper wire. Hurry up. Quick, pop it in. And just hope that you used enough wire. And if you use too much, obviously, it would take longer to blow the fuse. And if you didn't use enough, it would blow again. So you just had to kind of guess. But it would always work. I never had a problem. But that's about the extent of me being an experimentalist. You know, taking things apart for kids. But you guys really, this is impressive to me. You know, this is very impressive to me. People have this stuff in their houses, like, wow, good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know any of the technical terms, but most stuff doesn't blow up now. Right. Turn it on, it's come out. So
that's your goal, is just as long as it doesn't blow up?
That was my goal for the first year. The first cycle I made took 5 weeks, and oh man, you had to fix it a couple times.
I got to tell you, there are some really, really good experimenters out there that I have tried to work with, and this is in no way, but you've exemplified the exact issue that happens. And if you ever, if for some reason there's this, you're like thinking that you're explaining this to some engineer, right? And suddenly they don't want to even talk to you anymore. Okay.
Yeah, I get that.
It's not necessarily because they don't really want to hear what you have to say. The moment, like, for example, if I don't report you, you know what I mean? Like if I tell you to do something as a friend, like I say, no, have you tried blowing this up with your machine? You know, then I am taking responsibility, and therefore I can be in trouble because I'm the guy who should know better than let somebody play around with 40,000 volts.
But I want to share the liability with you.
Yep, it don't matter. The government don't care. But anyway, if you ever hear that sometimes, that might be sometimes a reaction. So but if you talk to other people who are just learning before they get that drilled into their head, you'll find they're much more receptive, I'm sure.
No, I hear you. Yeah, no, there's a lot. And I'm like, I got into this and I thought I kind of had an understanding of electricity because I'm an audio addict. I got amplifiers and subwoofers and I've been doing stereos for years. But that didn't really help at all. Like super basics, like positive, negative. And I'm like, I know about the mains and the grid and that kind of stuff, but
you know how a speaker works, right?
And resonant frequencies, and like I try and ask people what resonance means to them, and you should see the different definitions people give me.
Actually, yeah, that's almost all of them are wrong. Speaking of which, something that you're probably going to love. I had the opportunity this past weekend to be at the symposium, and at this symposium, which was after the Bath conference, EU 2019, this wonderful gentleman named Jonathan Nava, who you might know him from the boards. Okay.
Bell with me.
Like, I'm sure the NAVA, not hard to figure out. So if you see Jonathan Nava, he's on the Electric View page. So if you're looking, you see him there. Now, the reason I bring him up is because I specifically went, this is working. And he's like, yes. I'm watching it happen right now. Yes. And I'm looking with my own two friggin' eyes on what I'm looking at here. Okay. And it seems to be a pair of Tesla coils at the exact same diameter that are creating a resonance frequency between each other and are broadcasting power and letting up another source. Now, this is the part I was talking about earlier about the speaker. Okay, the speaker being not the speaker is being driven, but the heat is being generated elsewhere in the that's the max power theorem.
Well, depending on your amplifier and your voice coil, you're still going to get heat in a voice coil if you're driving it hard.
No, of course. But what I'm saying is that the maximum amount of power you can ever hit out of your speakers in an ideal situation is equal to the amount of heat you're generating inside the amplifier. That is the max power theorem situation. You can't get any more than that. You can never have 700 for 300. You have to have the heat has to come from somewhere. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's not watts. Otherwise, the heat isn't burning. You know what I mean? That's just.
I hear your theory, but I'm like, what
about?
No,
it's not my theory. Trust me. Just type in max power theorem. You're done. You know, it's just what it is. You've done it a million times. It's like when you're impedance matching. You know, it's very similar to that when you're hooking up stereo speakers. You want to make sure you're at the right impedance, because basically what you're saying is that if you change the impedance of one, basically you've knocked it out of 50-50 alignment. You're dropping it down to like 66-33 or, heaven forbid, 75-25. You know, you're basically, because you got 4 ohms on this and 1 ohm on that. You know what I mean? So you're like, that's wrong. It won't work. You know, you need to impedance match it. You need to make sure they get the right exact ohmage of the same speakers. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Hopefully you do. Yeah. So in fact, right now I have no idea where I was going with that. Apparently, I've lost my train of thought, but it was a wonderful expose of impedance matching.
I would like to find out, Chris, do you have a YouTube channel?
Oh, he does.
A couple of people might be interested in finding the address for that. I'll post it in YouTube or in the live chat in YouTube.
Barracuda Glass. Some people have already found him. So.
Okay, yeah, I still go with Barracuda Glass because when the glass industry started, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Operation Pipe Dreams, but I used to make pipes and bongs and stuff to make a living. So way back in the day, nobody kind of put their real name out. Nowadays, it's kind of past that, but everybody used to have their secret glassblower's identity.
What country are you in, by the way?
I'm in Canada. I'm in Calgary.
Well.
But in the States, this was a huge thing. So that's kind of why all the glassblowers have this alias name versus most common artists will just be like, I'm Chris Burak.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is if you want to find me, Barracuda Glass. And if you can't remember Barracuda and you can remember my last name, that's where Burak Barracuda is the link there.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they know because it says Chris Burak from Barracuda Glass talks Electric Universe on the Electric View 23 watching live now, right on the screen. So, yeah, I think we're doing good.
I just posted it in the live chat for those that don't know.
There we go. We got it covered.
All handled.
You can find I got a YouTube channel with some videos. Not everything gets up there. I take absolutely horrible videos for some reason, so I get Jody to help me, the wife. So thanks, Jody, for doing all the videos. Those are all because she's so great.
Just in case there's anyone wondering, by the way, sorry, just in case anyone's wondering, it's not even decriminalized here. It's just legal in Canada, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, moving on.
And Chris, that's why they called them the better half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
right?
That is true. By the way, if you're ever interested in some of these improving your video, there's apparently some attachments. I didn't even know that they existed. That wonderful gentleman, David Brown, Electric Universe Eyes, he bought one that's a magnifying glass. That's what he uses to really get up close, so he doesn't have to actually use really large arcs. Much safer, clearly, and zoom right in on them. I'm not expecting that, of course, of yourself, but I'm sure there's things like that you should be able to attach to whatever phone you have. I mean, things are it's that kind of world we live in now. So I'm sure there's people on the chat that can probably tell you about it.
Yeah,
I do believe he's talking about a USB-driven microphone or a microscope.
Well, whatever. I mean, he doesn't need a microscope. He needs like a good quality, like, zoom in.
I think one of the issues with taking videos of plasma is that your camera tries to autofocus on it all the time. It just messes it up. So your camera doesn't know where to focus. So Jody knows how to.
Well, I had the same problem while I was at the conference. I just locked it. Like, I just basically clicked on a part of the screen and said, "This is my focus. That's it. Screw off. Stop trying to fix it. I don't need you to fix it. Stop trying to fix it."
Yeah, I'm not as good at anything that involves keyboards or shortcut keys or focusing the frame properly.
By the way, I stood on King Arthur's tomb while I was there, so blasphemy. I'm going to hell, and you're all coming with me.
Woo!
So, speaking of hell,
they're laughing.
So, Krista, are you there? Are you actually listening? Are you actually there?
I'm here.
Well, hi. We didn't actually get a chance to hear from you so far. So, can you tell me the 3 things that you are most confused about in our conversation so far?
Ooh, good question.
Top 3 confused items. Well, I can tell you the top 3 things that I cannot wait to dig into a little bit deeper. And you were spot on with the arc, glow, dark modes of plasma. I'm really curious about that. And then some of the things that I didn't quite catch because the conversation got sort of dappled as multiple people were speaking simultaneously, but how the change, I guess, in pressure and heat can affect the way the different modes shift. And
we're going so far as to say that it can even affect gravity. Like yeah.
Okay, so that was completely lost on me.
Well, we just sort of alluded to it. Don't worry.
Okay.
Changing mass was what he said. And then what is mass? So that applies gravity, of course. So.
Exactly. But I mean, I would say that for the most part, it's been really clear, completely fascinating. Chris, your work is spectacular. It's just stunning. I've been checking out like your YouTube and some of the other things while we've been listening. And yeah, gosh, thanks so much for diving into that and doing the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I'm very glad to hear it, Krista. Krista, one of the reasons that she's here is she wrote to the Thunderbolts project, and it was like I was talking to them, and they were like, perhaps Krista could learn, like direct her in someone who could help her. I was like, actually, we can help her, and I said, just come on to the show and start asking questions, because one of the problems that we have is that. And Gareth noticed this when we were in the episode just a few episodes back, Seeing is Believing, where it was you forget that not everyone can say double layer, not everyone knows what every one of these terms mean, or capacitor even. or plasma tube or BJT or whatever the heck I was just babbling about. But who has a screen right now? Who has a screen? Who is driving? Richard?
Not me.
Is it Robert or Richard? Or
I don't think it's me. It might be Robert.
Is Robert, are you driving?
He might be AFK because I think he said he had to go.
Yeah, but how can he be driving if he's AFK? You see, that's just insane.
Well, yeah, in 2:31 he said, I have to go, everybody, let the PC stay on driving.
Who wants to drive? Say yes. We're going to go with Richard, because you'll hate me, Richard. So, Richard, grab the screen. And then start, searching for things. Bring Google over, or bring, that over, and I want you to look for stuff. You're doing pretty good so far, by the way.
I'm scared.
You're scared?
I'm scared.
That's why I didn't say nothing myself. I'm not ready to drive the Falcon.
There, see? Now look at that. We got this whole great big thing coming. So make that the full screen.
Oh my goodness! Okay.
Oh my God!
Here we
now
go.
Look what you've done. You've screwed everything up. The world is ending. No, just go ahead and just make it full screen, bud. Just boom.
Make this full screen.
Yeah, that window. Just boom. Just boom. The sun is now full screen. Go. Boom.
Hang on a second. My thing is. I can't get to the tabs up top for some reason.
Okay, just pull the whole thing. Just pull the whole thing down. Can you blow it at the just hit the
full screen.
Yeah, the full screen. Just double click or whatever. Okay.
Oh, and I wanted to.
There it is, right there.
Who was that?
That's what I want you to do it.
That's where I was going. I was trying to post that into Skype somehow.
You don't have to now. Now you're sharing. Krista,
I know, right?
Krista, Richard was thinking exactly along the lines. This is exactly what. Now look what you did, Richard.
Oh, sorry.
My bad. I can't buy good help. Anyway. So
good help.
This right here, though, gives you your voltage versus your amperage. And as you can see, as Chris Burak was saying, it is laughably nonlinear. There is no point on that screen. So as you can see, at certain points, for example, between F and G, you notice it goes down as the amperage goes up. That means that it will reduce the surface area or filament. And this is basically the same thing. Arc mode does it severely. And so things like the current saturation region, the B to C area, that is where Geiger counters work, where it goes click, 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 click to let you know that you're going to die. And the Townsend discharge thing, that is basically where you're getting your... that's where your Van de Graaff generators or your St. Elmo's fire or your Tesla coils sort of work at. Although if they get cranked right up, they go right into arc mode. As you can see, it's not, it's just a matter of current per square meter. So, and that's what A means, current density. So.
I just wanted to say, you can think of them as modes within modes. It's kind of lifelike almost. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Obviously, some people on the YouTube are getting the jokes. But if you guys want to have any questions, by the way, feel free, because we're actually on Don. If I'm not mistaken, this is Don Scott's page. If I'm not mistaken.
Nobody gets my jokes.
Really? Try
Usually.
one.
Yeah, Neil, a real world example to make it simple, because I might have a friend that was listening and we were kind of talking about this earlier.
Scroll
Not
slower,
to make it complicated,
Richard.
but I'm a DJ. So if I have 4 speakers that push out 500 watts per speaker at 8 ohms.
Uh-huh.
On the back of my amplifier, I have a button to push where I can run the speakers at 1,000 watts apiece at 4 ohms, but I have to do what's called bridge them. Literally, one wire comes out of the amplifier, goes into one speaker, to the next speaker, to the next speaker, to the next speaker.
Right.
Then you make a loop back to the amp. The amp gets hot, my man. When I say it gets hot, it gets really hot because now I've doubled the power output.
Oh, yeah.
The ohms are lower. Impedance is lower,
well, that's,
but now I'm just amp is driving now.
That's
so now
why
I'm driving
it can do
4,000 watts. Yeah, I'm driving it. I mean, and when I say hot, I mean I used to have one of those stand-up fans like you have in your house, and I used to just put a stand-up fan right behind the amp because the fans are built into it. Just weren't enough. I mean, when I say hot, I mean really hot. So that's what's driving the speaker essentially. It's the energy, if you want to call it that, being generated from the amp itself.
Stop, Richard.
I know.
Loading your amp down.
Richard, right there. Click on that one. Okay, that's all you need to know. So I know it sounds weird, but resistance is in one direction. That's your heat. Your magnetic inductance is in the other direction. And the relationship between the two is basically your electrical impedance. And that's what makes things get really hot. Anyway, still, but you're not wrong, Sean. It is.
Yeah, it's like this, it puts a tremendous load on the amp. So the amp's going to get hot. It just is.
Well, you're doubling the voltage basically by bridging the two together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and I've learned not to do that if I don't have to, because I have blown speakers apart. I mean, literally, I would stick them all together so I could get a little bit more sound pressure level with all four being together, but you can, it's really dangerous, if you will, from a standpoint of you can damage your equipment because you're really generating a lot of heat and power, doubling it. So that's just something to just throw in there to kind of keep it simple, if it was simple. If it was,
you can go ahead, Robert, and take over again. Richard was just taking over while you were gone. We were looking for a particular thing called electrical impedance. And basically, Don Scott's that wonderful VA curve or VI curve, volts versus amps in the plasma, which obviously you weren't able to do, but it still worked great until that point. So kudos.
Well, because I shut Skype down.
It's all good, dude.
I got
Don't worry
so
about
much
it.
going on.
Don't worry about it. So go ahead, Robert, if you want. So now we're at this, basically, here we are now. So now we heard from Krista. Derek, is there anything that you want to ask?
Can you guys hear me?
No, we can't hear you at all. You're an alien.
No, well, it sounds like sounds like you can. Well, I had to switch from my phone to my computer, so I wasn't sure if the sound was going to get messed up or not.
It works like a charm.
And I did have to step out, so a little while.
I'm glad we caught you.
I missed quite a bit.
Hey, same here. I was on autopilot driving this thing.
But no, this is awesome, Chris. What you're doing is pretty badass, if I could say that. But again, not having a scientific background, I don't know what to say other than I have been watching some of the stuff that Sapphire's doing. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I love Sapphire Project.
Yeah, I mean, so like, how does that, like, are you trying to get to that level? I mean, like, or can you explain like the difference between their goals and your goals? Or, I mean, and again, this is coming from somebody that doesn't have that technical knowledge, so forgive me for being pretty lame here.
Well, I'm just trying to, I guess not explain, like Sapphire to me is trying to stick probes into the plasma and chart it and tell you where the voltage drops are and find, what's the word? The cell walls, they talk
double
about
layers.
Yeah,
the double layers. Yeah.
So yeah, they're trying. As far as I understand, they're trying to actually physically measure where those are and how they work, which I don't think that the scientific model really has a current understanding of. Yeah. So I think that's awesome, but I'm not at the point where I'm trying to stick probes in there and get any numbers. I'm just trying to make lamps that help me make sense of all this. Gotcha. So I'm still at the point where I'm like, everything you fill is different. So there's really no recipe to any of this. And I'm like, you can look online and see what other people have done, but if you put a certain recipe in the wrong size vessel, it's totally different. So there's just a ton of variables. So I'm still in the point where I'm just trying to learn to the point where I can predict what I'm doing.
Right.
Sometimes I'll make a shape, I'll try and fill it, and it just won't do what I thought. And then you just want to smash everything, and then you take an hour and put some different gas in there and just mess with it, and then you get a new, how it does that. And then you kind of just got to incorporate that into your plans. It's a lot like glassblowing, I find. Electronics and glassblowing is you just kind of walk the path, and when the path falls away, you just don't walk there anymore, and eventually you can go anywhere you want. As long as you know what doesn't work.
You and I go remember circuitries very differently then.
Well, I kind of see how I've been doing Tesla coils is it either works how I thought or I assumed something wrong. And
you're playing with plasma. I completely understand the variables that you are suddenly playing with. But there is that certain sense of certainty that they give you when you build something and you're like, holy crap, it works. Like from scratch or something, like that kind of thing. And I'm sure you've experienced that yourself when you're like, oh my God, everything's working great. Like it's not breaking. I expected this to already fail twice, but here it goes,
Yeah, like the first time I used Tesla coil Java Pro or whatever to actually calculate stuff and then put my frequency meter out and I was like, it's actually doing the frequency it said. Versus before I was kind of less math inclined and I'd just tune it. And then once it works, I'd be like, I don't know what frequency it's at or how many watts or what the impedance is. But look, sparks coming out. When? So I'm kind of getting to the point where I can kind of predict.
See you later, William. Thanks for being here. William is supposed to have to take off.
The other thing I was going to say, if you want to show some charts and graphs, one that really helps is Paschen's law. Which is the electrical breakdown potential of different gases versus voltage, which is kind of helps explain how, so if you take a Tesla coil that's making, say, 3-inch sparks in air, and you replace that with a pressure at a certain certain pressure, the pressure of the vessel is going to determine how much breakdown you get. That kind of helps with the glow mode, arc mode stuff.
Well,
say that law one more time. What's the law called?
Paschen's law. Paschens, I think. Let me see if I can Google it.
Paschens, I got it. Boom. All right.
That's kind of what they were modeling on the Sapphire project because they were using Paschen's law.
Yeah, probably.
Who's driving, by the way?
So this is like people are real familiar with neon signs.
Not me.
Go ahead, Rich. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
The coffee. People are real familiar with neon signs, which kind of illustrates this chart. So neon signs are filled to like the bottom of that bell curve for neon, which makes it the most easy to light and the most efficient.
Right.
And then as you put more neon into that sign, it's going to get harder to light and draw more current once it does light. So if you look at neon signs as being on the very bottom of those bell curves, then like plasma lamps and like Tesla balls are more like halfway back up to atmosphere. And then that's how you get that arc mode, is you got to just put more gas in there and then it becomes more conductive. And then it all of a sudden will just go to arc mode once the current's there, I think, kind of.
Well, that's exactly what it should do with the curve that Richard brought up earlier. Is that as soon as it goes from glow to arc, you can see that large, steep decline as the amperage goes up. It filaments, and I've seen that in your work where you have a glow mode going up the middle of one of your objects. I don't know who's driving, but you can go there to look at that. But it was that wonderful one that goes up like I'm not sure if it looked like almost like a pumpkin or something, and then it divided into like 16 or so or 12 tendrils that went like as it went into arc mode up at the top. I thought that was just a beautiful piece of work.
Thank you. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. If you go to the Ank's a really good example of that because it has a wide base and it has the glow mode at the bottom, and then it constricts into a smaller diameter, and then that makes a really hot arc through that section, and then it refilaments and fractals and branches back out at the top sections into the two arms around the top piece. So that's like really what I'm going for in most fills is to get a good visualization of both of those effects. And then it looks the coolest to me, in my opinion, anyway. And then that's kind of the theory behind like the sconces that I was showing behind me here is they have that long, smaller section at the bottom.
Right.
And then slightly bigger volume at the top. And then that way you get that really hard arc coming right out of the electrode. And it has a chance to kind of fractal out into the top of the lamp a bit more. And then you get all the really nice feathery looking stuff at the top.
Basically, it looks like you're imitating glass flowers of electricity.
Yeah, thank you. I like that idea. But it's the vessel shapes really determines the plasma effects. Like if you just take a very small ball, it's hard to get arc mode and glow mode because of just the vessel shape. You almost need to get a big shape and then a small constriction and then a bigger volume again. So like some of the new ones that I've been doing that just look like hot air balloons,
right?
Where it's got a wider base and then a constriction and then like a big bubble on the top. It's kind of what I'm chasing to do that because now it's helping that constriction and you get that really hard arc and then it has a big volume to kind of fractal out in and then you get the coolest feathers or petals like you were saying.
Well, that's and obviously in your line of work, the goal would be to make something as impressive as possible. One of the
balance with the lawyers though.
Fair enough.
There's the whole liability thing we were talking about before, and that's what. So, like everybody knows, you can get a plasma ball for $5, but it's 5 watts. So it's kind of like stereo amplifiers. We were talking about stereos before. Like you can you can get a 5-watt amplifier for $5 that'll drive your speakers, but that doesn't necessarily make it good. Right? Or you can get a 200-watt amplifier that'll blow up your speakers. So it's totally trying to find that line between getting it to light really easily, because if you need 30,000 volts to light it, it's going to be a hard consumer product, right? So keeping the pressure low enough that it lights easily, and then keeping the gas mix right so that it doesn't draw too much current, and then having the right driver so that the conductivity is good. So like some lamps, if you put too much, like if you fill something with too much xenon, it's you got a 0 ohm resistor in there versus if you put neon in there, it's 1,000 ohms minimum. So it's kind of like a resistance, like we were talking about with speakers. Like you put 2 lamps on the same driver, it's just going to pull twice as much power out of the driver until the driver quits. It's not the lamp it's the amplifier that's making the power. So it's just an exponential thing, right? Where to get like.
But I would be thinking some of the things you could do.
Pieces, there's quite a bit of juice going into there. So if you touch that lamp on the bottom section where the real flashy xenon is,
right,
you'll get a 3/4 inch of corona off of it into your finger. Versus if you touch it on the very top section, there's nothing left. You can barely even tell that it's drawing sparks.
I see what you're saying.
It's a diminishing. It's like a kind of like a voltage divider kind of situation. Oh
yes, no, I see what you're doing. But this is just, I mean, obviously, because you have that ball is acting like a capacitor in the middle.
Yeah, it's kind of like you got 3 capacitors hooked up in series to each other. So the DC can't get through any of that, but one will couple to the next one, will couple to the next one, will couple to the next one.
Right.
So I kind of cheated a little bit, and in the bottom I got some water between the two bottom sections. Like the dual lamp fits into this little cone sleeve in there.
I got the idea. Yeah, okay.
I filled up that section with water, which makes it draw a little bit more power too, but the water helps it couple to the next lamp. And then by the time you get up to the neon, it's really low pressure. And by the time you get to the very top one, that argon is at the same pressure as like a neon sign. So it's not going to do any crazy cool arcs, but it lights at the top of that thing. So it's kind of tricky to get the whole thing to work.
One of the things I thought that was really pretty amazing was when I saw them actually use a Tesla coil to play music.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was the Super Mario Brothers theme or something like that, which is appropriate just because of the sound, because 8-bit. But still, I was wondering, with that row behind you, and I noticed that they were all different shapes. Were you trying to do something like that at the beginning?
Sorry, which row?
Those long tubes that are up behind you that I said that would eventually sort of look like flowers.
Oh, the sconces.
The sconces.
I'm just trying to make.
Because I just noticed they were all slightly different. I was wondering if you were making them for a particular resonance. That's just my thoughts.
Oh, no,
and then you could make music with them.
I'm trying to get, just trying to do as many fills into the same shape as I can to get a kind of better understanding. Just trying to take more of the variables out. So like I've been just filling random different size things, which makes it fun, but hard to predict anything. So I wanted to do like 12 sconces that are all as close to the same shape as I can, and then see how many different effects I can get by just changing the gas pressures. So all those sconces have different gases and different pressures in them, and then most of them are just getting driven off of the same driver. So like the ones you're looking at now, the xenon ones, those runs on like 25 watts, super easy to run. They run on the cheapest driver that you can get commercially, and they don't get hot at all, and they'll just run 24 hours a day.
I gotta tell you, every time I see these things, I have like Donnie Darko flashbacks. Swear to God, I'm just seeing Frank's ears. Like, did I just?
Oh, that's the one with the crazy rabbit or something, hey?
Yeah, like that's what I'm seeing.
What
like
you're talking about?
Just Jesus. That, and of course, then you get the stomach worms. I mean, I still wonder what screwed me up more, Donnie Darko or David Lynch's Eraserhead, but I'm still going to go with Eraserhead.
I'll take some notes here.
On movies to mess me up? Yeah, I'll give you a list.
Yeah, send me a list of movies to watch.
Yeah, but not all at once. You have to take time to digest each and every one of them and then back up and go, what the heck did I just see?
It'd be a good change. I've been watching documentaries.
It's like Fight Club, but shh, we can't talk about that. But his name is Robert Paulson.
Oh, I love Fight Club.
Shh. The government. Shh.
Right. What kind of coffee table really defines me as a person?
That is so true. What amount of electric bunny ears defines me as a person?
What voltage do I want to be perceived as?
Everything's just a copy of a copy of a copy.